Hey guys, what's up? It is finally time to knock out the best He-Man in Masterverse countdown. That's today. Finally. So, this is going to be a top 9 countdown. That's every single one of these that has released in Masterverse so far that has a He-Man-esque theme. Things like King Grayskull were not a part of this. And we're not talking about the overall best Masterverse figure. We are talking about variants of He-Man. Couple of things to mention. One, Viking He-Man is in this group twice, because technically, though he is one figure, depending on how we choose to display him, he's two very different figures, such as he is Viking He-Man, or he is a classic version of He-Man. Okay? So that was decided. Also, we decided to put Faker in because Faker is a variant of He-Man. I mean, he is literally the original definition of a repaint as far as this line goes anyway. They released He-Man again and made him blue. But that brings us to the next part. Faker is in it, but Faker's not in it. So the new Faker that was just released, I don't have it. And I thought about getting it and adding him to this and making it a top 10 countdown. I could have done that. I almost did do that. But I decided not to. If I had ordered him off Amazon yesterday, he would get here on the 6th. And this video is already so far behind. Like, so far behind that I honestly don't want to wait that long. I want to do the video, and there's still a lot of things to unbox in terms of Masterverse, and there's still a lot of things to get unboxed in terms of other things. There's G.I. Joes to talk about. There's G.I. Joes to talk about. There's Gunpla to talk about that I haven't built or done yet. There's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles that are coming in. There's Golden Axe figures. There's Storm collectibles and whatnot. There's a lot of stuff to go over still. And we still have the 2 cases of old toys that I need to go through. And I've decided how I'm going to do those videos as well. We're going to break those into 5s. So we're basically going to pick the box up, put it on the table, reach my hand in, grab 5 items out of the box, and talk about those items and figure out whether or not they go on the shelf or they go out the door. So, with all of that taken care of, this is a top 9 countdown, and every single time I pick out a He-Man, he's going to come off the table and go onto the shelf. So let's get this started and let's figure out, by my opinion, I guess that's the last thing we should cover. By my opinion, this is not your opinion, and this is not the 100% determined facts by the entire inclusion of all the world voting in one place so that we could get the definitive answer of all sales charts ever. Because even if we went by sales charts, it wouldn't necessarily be true, because just because you bought it doesn't necessarily make it the best version. So, this is very much, when I look at them, these appeal to me in this order for whatever reason. And I should start this really by saying I don't dislike any of them. Every single one of the Masterverse that I have bought, I intend on keeping. I like them all. So, let's figure out who's number 9. Number 9 is Revelation He-Man. This guy is in my 9th place, and there's a reason. Now remember what I said. I don't hate a single one of these. Every single one of these are fantastic. But Revelation hits, for me, as being the weakest of all the He-Man currently released in the Masterverse line. Now this is a personal preference, and there is a real reason. This guy got me into He-Man. This guy made me a fan. This show was fantastic. But even though I think that this guy is nearly perfect in terms of what he's supposed to be, he's Revelation He-Man. I mean, absolutely no denying that's what he is. But in terms of that, he is also a very much cartoon He-Man. Now, we've talked about this before in other videos. The reason I got into this property to begin with is because I was a huge fan of things like Conan the Barbarian, Swords and Sorceries, Frank Frazetta artwork, darker fantasy barbarian stuff. So when I see this guy, and I know exactly what he is, and I think he's really cool, a lot of these other variants right here just hit that darker edge for me. They look a little more realistic, they look rougher, some of them are carrying battle damage, even to the point of having scars on their face, and that puts him at the very bottom of the list. He got number 9. The next He-Man on the list, coming in at number 8, is Space He-Man. Space He-Man is cool. Cooler than I expected him to be. I never expected to like this figure at all, but he's so well done that I have to give credit to him. I just have to. And the fact that Masterverse has been given this kind of arm now where he can actually hold the sword up, and very much, now that I've seen all of the original series and seen him deflect blaster bolts and things like that, I very much get a Luke Skywalker feeling off of this guy, and that makes him survive for me. He has just enough of that look in general to be barbarian. With his shirt off and everything, he's very much a 1980s action hero. He's buff, he's ripped. The body cap for Masterverse is fantastic because it's a real muscular body. Real. I love that. I think it's obtainable, and I think it's fantastic, and I think he looks great. And one of the big things that cut him out of the running is that I don't think his face is right. He doesn't look like He-Man. He doesn't. Not to me. It's hard for me to place exactly who I would tell you this guy looks like. In fact, I don't think I could do it. But I feel like I've seen this guy on TV before, and I feel like he played some real pretty men characters. Is that a bad thing? Not necessarily. But if you're getting what I'm talking about, he's just really pretty. And while that's fine for him, I gotta say, and I don't want to use this terminology and have it misunderstood, but not my He-Man. It's just not. This Luke Skywalker He-Man is cool. And he proves something that we talked about during his video. You could do anything with this property. And if you know what you're doing, and if you cut the corners correctly, it will work inside of Motu. Luke Skywalker in Motu, he's right here. He's right here. Star Wars, Motu, right here. Lightsaber, bam, we're done. It works. And that's fantastic. And this figure is amazing. But for me, who leans more towards the barbarian edge, who got into this property because of that, he falls into this area where he just kind of hits the bottom of my list, even if he is a solid figure. Next at number 7, we have Savage He-Man. Savage He-Man is the next one here. He is number 7. Savage He-Man hits that cool gimmick I was talking about. He very much is from Revelation, but he was also Masterverse's chance to step out and do very much another version of He-Man. This, as far as I am concerned, is mini comics He-Man. I mean, the fact that he comes with the spear and the items that he came with, including a power sword, that's who this guy is. And we talked about it in his video. If any one of these guys has been covered, by the way, if you're interested at all and you want to hear my in-depth talks about what I think and how I feel when I see these guys, you can go check those videos out. But look, this right here, this was mini comics He-Man. It may have been intended at first as the He-Man for Savage when he goes nuts and he transforms and he doesn't have the sword and he beats the crap out of Skeletor. But they knew what they were doing, including things like the axe and the spear. This is Savage, right out of the jungle, mini comics He-Man, and that is really cool. But there is a line between caveman comic and barbarian comic. And that line can surprisingly easily be stepped into. Case in point, this guy. See, I like Red Sonja. I like things like Valeria. But I'm not a huge fan if you were to say, I believe her name is Sheena. That's cool. I've read a couple of the comics, but I'm not a huge fan. Just like I'm not a huge fan of Tarzan. And I'm not a huge fan of, I believe his name is Kazar. Those characters are cool, but I'm not a huge fan of those characters. And this guy falls into that caveman-esque type of deal. Man fighting dinosaurs, very big, muscular and everything, carries, has to do his hunting and everything. That's cool, but on a personal note, I am a barbarian fan, not necessarily a caveman fan, and that picked him down on the list quite substantially. But he is really cool. And the fact that he hit that mini-comic area expanded Masterverse, and it really makes me appreciate what he is. Next at number 6, we have Viking He-Man, specifically the armor variant. Viking He-Man is awesome. He's so awesome that I bought him twice. I mean, does that tell you anything? I bought him twice because I really did think this guy was amazing. Easily one of the best in the line. I think his coloring is fantastic. I like what they did with the skin. I like the face. I enjoy almost everything about him. And the boot knife, I love the boot knife. That is an all impressive extra little piece of detail that I feel needs to be now in basically every single He-Man. I love that. And I love when a character can carry all their equipment. That's fantastic. However, as my daughter was fond of pointing out, and it did start to take a little hold with me as she pointed it out, she said, He-Man should be, this is what she said, okay? And she's 11. And even she goes, shouldn't He-Man be like tough, manly, like battle hardened? And I said, well, he is. That's a Viking. And she goes, yeah. What's up with like the pretty gems on his helmet? And you know what? It's a mild thing, but she's right. Let me click this real quick so we can get a focus on him. She's right. It's kind of goofy, and it did kind of get me looking at him. I think his armor is fantastic. The only thing I really would have done differently is I do feel like the Viking helmet probably should have been dirty, maybe a little scarred up. And the rest of him seems to work really, really well. I like the shoulder pauldrons. I like pretty much everything about this guy, but it is true that with the helmet, it takes a little bit away. I've heard a lot of people say, well, that's like Conan the Barbarian. Yeah, kind of. But I actually preferred Conan after he lost his helmet as well. And if we're talking about Viking helmet or cool warrior helmet, I'm definitely liking what's going on with Vikron a lot more than I'm liking the Viking-esque helmet, which, without going into the history, that's not a Viking helmet anyway, but we know what we're calling it, and we know that's because of the fantasy of the situation. It's a Viking helmet. But yeah, I prefer this He-Man to have the axe. I think that works best with him. I just think it's really cool. And overall, this guy's solid, but he has to fall somewhere on the list, and his armor does keep him under the other He-Men, which are less armored And that's the versions I like. And we had a big discussion about this in multiple videos. If you're interested in my views on things like that, definitely check out I'm Collecting HeMan Now. That was early on with all this process. 1 Year as a Motu Fan talks a little bit about it. And the last one that I really got to talking about it was Space HeMan. I talked about why I prefer the barbarian art styles. And so, yeah. That does keep this guy lower on the list as opposed to his other variant, which I prefer over him. In terms of once you take the armor off and revert him to the classic HeMan. But let's keep this countdown going. Next guy on the countdown is Faker. Faker takes the next spot. So yes, Faker. This Faker, the obvious robot Faker, hits spot 5. Why? Because I know people are going, what? Really? If you watch the video where I got to review this guy, having him in my hands, seeing the battle damage, the blood on him and everything like that, the dark variant, the small little differences in his nature which reveal him as a Faker, this guy is one of the absolute reasons why I love Motu, is you can do anything. This is the Terminator. He's the Terminator in Motu, and he's fantastic. And the longer I spent with this guy, especially after I put him on the shelf, and every now and then I would just kind of look over at him, this is a menacing, cool effect. That battle damage, missing all of his stuff, I don't like the fully exposed face. I'd rather it to be damaged. Here, let's do the same thing again. Let's get him focused. Look at him. He is really cool. I love this body idea. I just think that is absolutely fantastic. And there's something very, very legit scary about this guy showing up in figure form when he stands in the background and there's something obviously wrong about him. So he's going to definitely be one of the coolest things on my bad guy shelf, because once he's on there, anybody that kind of looks in there and he's kind of got this looking down, big frame, kind of angry Terminator look about him, people that won't know will first go, wait, is that like HeMan? Wait a second, that's actually really, why is he metal? Oh my God. Is that like the Terminator? Yeah, it pretty much is. And this guy's awesome. This guy's way cooler than I think people even give him credit for. This is a cool idea. This is a cool implementation. This is a solid figure, and I'm actually very impressed with him. And you know what? I wasn't until I held him in my hands. I was just like, cool, Faker. Then I took him out of the package, and I looked at him, and I saw the effect, and I touched it, and I noticed that the skin was actually raised off the metal part, which was really cool. And the paint is decent, and it's rugged, and it's nasty, like the way that it's bleeding. And the idea that right there you could tell that it was a Terminator, and the way he looks on the shelf, like, this is fantastic. This is fantastic, and that's the reason he starts the top 5. Number 4 and 3, I came across a bit of a problem, and they became interchangeable. Yes, spot 4 and 3, you could pretty much say are interchangeable. This is going to be Battle Armor HeMan and Movie HeMan. And these two figures, I went back and forth over and over and over again as to this guy's in third. No, this guy's in third. No, this guy's in third. And it was really tough for me to make this decision. And I finally decided that depending on the day, it's either this guy or this guy. And I don't know 100% who edges who out. So while trying to figure this out, I fought with myself. Because the armor on this guy is really cool. And I like his old gruff look. And I love the fact that he has scars on his faces. And I love the battle damage. And I love this lion. And I like the fact that he has both his weapons and his shield. And he can hold all of it and use all of it. He's got the boot knife. This guy is solid. This is a really cool older He-Man idea. But then I got this guy. And all of a sudden, I was in a conundrum. Because this guy's cape is fantastic. This is solid. This is a solid soft goods. His sword is unique amongst the other power swords. Like, really, really unique. And it's really cool. He carries both a hip knife, he carries a boot knife, and he carries a gun, and he can have all of it. He harkens back to the original concept designs of He-Man in terms of the character that we come to know, with the battle harness, with mostly being naked, wearing the loincloth, and things of that nature. All of that is here, and it's incorporated, and it's solid. And if you were to ask me right now, today, I lean towards this guy being in third place and him being in fourth. But when I started this, I was fighting with myself that maybe he should be in third place. And I can't make that decision. These guys, I think, have a lot going for them. And it was really hard to make the determination. And then I realized something. This is my list. And this is the way I feel about it. So it was really hard to determine these guys one way or another, and I decided not to. Because with it being my list, this is how I feel about it. And I'm just being honest. If I was to pick one or the other at any point in time right now, I could do this list again next week and the list would change because it would definitely be different. Because I don't know what it is about these two guys, but I find these two characters in general, these two versions, to be... They even each other out so well. These are fantastic. This is my 4 and 3. That brings us to number 2. And I know, right off the bat, so I'm going to surprise a lot of people with this one. It's the 40th anniversary He-Man. Now I know. This guy was on all kinds of lists. I've seen this guy over and over and over again on Best Figure of the Year. I saw this guy on people's treasured collections. I've seen people open this guy and lose it. And I think a portion of that is the nostalgia. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not using that as a bad word. So don't misunderstand. Nostalgia can be a good thing, especially when we're talking about something like this. This, I'm sure, for a lot of people took you right back to your childhood. This is He-Man. This is the best in terms of being He-Man in Masterverse or in current figures, period. At this price point, I need to put that out there. I know that you could spend $250 to $500 on a He-Man and get a better He-Man. But in terms of He-Man, at this price point, this is the absolute perfect figure that you could get your hands on. It is fantastic. It is beautiful. It is amazing. And giving him this hand, by the way, still one of the greatest things they could have ever done for Masterverse, which became a staple of the line from this point forward, and thankfully it has, because it's fantastic. This guy is unbelievable. What hurt him was the body. For most people, this gigantic Hulk body, this ridiculous chest cavity, these redonkulous abs, the middle piece body right here, this part of the buck is what people think the He-Man character should be. And if you're talking about the deformed original figure, you're right. You're right. Because He-Man is literally a man made of muscle, a literal hulking behemoth, which is completely unobtainable unless you're doing some ridiculous steroid crap, or this is pretty much the only thing you do with your life. Have I seen guys about this big? Yes, I have. You could do this, but let's be realistic about the situation here. This He-Man is not, he's not normal human body. Not even in shape human body. He's a level of exaggerated ridiculousness. Now, that's not a bad thing either, by the way. Because in most comic books and things of that nature, it's an escape and it's a fantasy and it should be exaggerated. And if it was all just normal, what's the point? What's the point? I like fantasy and I like the escape, and that's part of why I like barbarians and yada yada. And so I very much understand this. But for me, there was always going to be a number one, because while this has nostalgia for a lot of people, it does not for me at all. Because I don't have any nostalgia tied to this property. I just got here and have only been a fan for 1 year. Which means my favorite He-Man, number one, right here, as far as I'm concerned, this is the best. This one here has my attention more than any other variant out there. I like the coloring of the skin. I like that the face is serious and rough. He's kind of a tougher guy. He's not exactly a nice guy, but he's not exactly mean-mugging you either. He's just a dude. I love the battle harness with the separation piece right here that looks really, really good. I like the leather straps that go all the way around that look really, really good. I like the pauldron here. I like his Master Sword, that it has this actual wrap around the Master Sword. I like that he came with the axe. I love the boot knife, which is where this idea kind of started with the boot knife. He was the first one to get it. And the only thing he's missing is that wrist. But because they're starting to put this wrist into the Masterverse, I can literally take the hand off of Space He-Man, put it on him, and then he could easily raise his hand, raise his sword aloft. This, personally, is the best He-Man in Masterverse. It is He-Man reimagined if he was launched in Masterverse. That's what it is. That's exactly what it is, and that's, I'm positive, what it's meant to be. Just like the Beastman that has the two variants. And when you revert him, he becomes an absolutely fantastic classic Beastman. And not just him, but Skeletor as well. Until I get my hands on the 40th anniversary Skeletor, I haven't seen that one. But for me, and I don't have him sitting up here, of course he's downstairs. For me, reverting this Skeletor right here, if you revert Barbarian Skeletor to the other form, the classic form, he's the best Skeletor I've seen thus far. The best. They knocked it out of the park with this and him. Viking He-Man and Barbarian Skeletor, personally, for me, are the best versions of those characters in Masterverse. They are a complete 100% dead-on target reimagining of the classic material in Masterverse style. That's the body I like. It's strong, it's manly, it's tough, it's cut, but it's not exaggerated to a point where it looks ridiculous to me. The sword, fantastic. The equipment he came with, fantastic. I could sit here and I could gush all day. I could, because I really think he's amazing. That is a fantastic figure. And about the only thing that can make him better is if I was to get serious and repaint parts of him. In fact, with an absolute 100% repaint, not changing certain things that I like the face and whatnot, but a repaint, pulling some of the hair out and whatnot, really bringing it to the forefront, maybe fixing the loincloth and adding a little bit more color here and there. If you got the right painter to go over this guy, he'd be an absolute masterpiece. And I would argue that he already is for the price point that he sits at. For the price that you will pay for Viking HeMan, as far as I'm concerned, he is the best HeMan in Masterverse. But I'm sure that you guys view this differently. And if you do, go ahead and tell me. Because your list is right too. This is about how it hits us. How it feels in particular to us. What it says to us. My collection is not your collection. And your collection is not my collection. We collect different, and different things hit us for different reasons. My Batman might not be your Batman. I have a very specific thing that I like and what I like to see. You are the same way. There are things that we hold on to that have to deal with our nostalgia, our childhood, and our current personalities. And some things speak to us in different ways. And for me, that's the perfect HeMan. Maybe not for you, but here's your chance. Let me know what you think. Later on, guys.
I have spoken. Take what you will from it.